Hi, everyone. So welcome to another episode of Marketing Demystified. I am Harpreet and I will be your host for this show along with Vikesh. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Harpreet. I head marketing for Kangaroo Group. I have about 20 years of experience in marketing. I have worked with organizations of high repute in the past, such as American Express, HCL, and IBM. Currently, I head marketing for Kangaroo Group. And this initiative has been brought into light primarily to address the gaps which are there in marketing, what is being practiced in the industry, and the marketing which is being taught in schools and colleges and universities. So I and Vikesh, while we were deliberating that there should be a platform where experts from both academia and industry can come together to address the challenges which are faced by marketeers. In this particular episode, we have an expert who is going to enlighten us on various aspects of pricing. And before we get into the episode, I'll request Vikesh to introduce himself.
Thanks, Harpreet. Hello, everyone. My name is Vikesh Dhani. I'm co-founder of a publishing company called Oakbridge Publishing and an online tax knowledge solution known as Taxo Online. I've spent about 24 years in book publishing and information solutions companies like McGraw-Hill, Pearson, and LexisNexis, which is a part of Reed Elsevier Group. And I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation with our wonderful guest, Mr. Vigyan Verma, today on pricing.
Sure. Thank you, Vikesh. Vigyanji, please introduce yourself.
Hey, Harpreet. Firstly, thanks a lot for getting me here, Vikesh. That was a nice introduction, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I've been in this space of brand building, most of my career, which is 20 odd years. A bulk of it has been in the advertising industry. I worked in advertising firms like J. Walter Thompson Group and EDP Group, but I've also had experience working for startup, which was in Alphabet space, and there are some interesting nuggets of experience on pricing, which we will talk about later in the show. Yeah, and in the last couple of years, I've taken on a consulting role, and I run a company called The Bottom Line, which is into brand strategy and content solutions. So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vigyan, for that introduction. And the topic, what we are going to discuss today amongst the three of us, is something which is very important from both, from in fact, all the angles, whether it is business, whether it is marketing, whether it is sales. It is a topic which is of most interest to the marketeers as well as salespeople, because that is what defines your not only your product positioning, your brand positioning, but also your business revenues. So I'm talking about pricing as a topic. We are going to delve into different aspects of pricing today. And let's start the conversation. So Vigyanji, the first thing which we would like you to enlighten us is about what are the different types of pricing strategies?
Yeah, so, just before we get on to that, it may be, I think I want to share the screen. I'm hoping you're able to see it. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. So firstly, before we get to what you asked for, if you look at the cultural part about pricing, and from a very Indian perspective, if you were to look at pricing, we have a very strong association of pricing and value, right? And we always look for it. And, historically and culturally, if you look at some of the big campaigns like Maruti had, right? So this proposition, which works across all levels and across all society, across the society and different cultural, different demographic segments, is pretty strong about the value and about the pricing. And we have, we all of us in our lives have looked for the extra dhania or the curry leaves, or and in the e-commerce era that we live in, they are always hunting for that discount coupon, right? So one is very sensitive about it, and marketers have always looked at pricing and continue to look at influencing decision making from a pricing perspective. So today, from a if you were to look at some of the recent past, some of the disruptions which have happened in the Indian, marketing sphere, right? And some of these disruptions have had a very prominent role played by pricing. So if you look at the entire disruption which was caused by Geo, from a pricing and data perspective, whether it is budget airlines, which really opened up air travel for a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have afforded travel, right? Air travel. Even e-commerce, if you look at e-commerce, the way a lot of Indians felt more comfortable having something in hand and then paying up, right? So this entire understanding of not parting with your own money till you are in possession of something, right? That was a very strong motivator. So we had something which is very unique to Indian market, which is cash on delivery, right? So some of these things are related to pricing. So pricing should be looked at from a perspective of how it adds value or how it delivers value. At what stage should it be spoken about? At what stage should it be charged? So some of these conversations which are related to pricing have a role to play in each of these aspects of creating, of charging a customer, right? At which stage do you charge the customer? So that's the backdrop, right? Why are we talking about pricing? Because it has a huge impact on the way decisions can be made, on the way new consumer segments can be created, and new values that can be unlocked. So, moving ahead, right? I mean, if you were to look at the types of pricing that one can talk about, right? So, essentially, the most obvious one that we start off is competition-based pricing, right? Which is clearly based on market benchmarks. Now, for most of the products that exist, and for most of brands which exist, let's say if you're in a space of hair care, shampoo, or if you're in case, let's say biscuits, Mali biscuits, for instance, it's extremely cluttered category with many prominent brands, but you don't have an opportunity to really do disruption, which is based on pricing so much because there are benchmarks. So a lot of pricing is dependent on competition, especially in cluttered categories. The other way could be to really mark up on cost of goods. So that's the second way of looking at pricing, which is, and this may be relevant when you're trying to create a new category, when you're trying to get, when there are no great references that you can talk about and you can lean on. That is when you look at cost plus. When you say which is cost of goods and you do a markup, not so common, but since this session is to really look at everything that is done in this space, this is a little dynamic. Dynamic is the one which is very important these days and completely demand and supply. All of us have been part of this experience, whether it is any form of airlines or travel or Uber. So it's something which is completely dependent on the supply and dynamics, and therefore a lot of algorithms are required, a lot of projections, a lot of predictions based on and really trying to be one step ahead of the competition as well. So this is the one which is often criticized as well as trying to fleece customers. So it has, while it may make a lot of business sense, sometimes it has implications where people are not too happy about this aspect where you apply a dynamic. So it has to be applied perhaps carefully, but yeah, it's another way of looking at it. Freemium is something which is very common, right? I mean, if you look at a lot of digital services today, you have a basic pack and you have a value-added pack, right? It could be a Spotify, it could be a subscription to a SaaS product as well. So here we're talking about B2B as well. And it's really trying to get people to experience something at a base level, give them a sense of what the product can be and what, give them bits of experience of what the value-added experience can also be. And then eventually, at some point, look at charging them or trying to induce them through, and making a better value out of them. So once they start becoming a full paying customer, you have, the lifetime value of that customer becomes higher. So freemium is something which I think is more common because of digital ways of payment and digital ways of engagement with customers. Right. The other one, which is the high-end loan, typically it's seasonal discount sale, right? I mean, you have something that starts at a certain level, and there is a drop, and there's a most fashion brands have some sort of discounting pattern which goes in. So this is the high and low approach to pricing, where the pitfall of this approach is that if it becomes too predictable, like most fashion brands have now become very predictable in their discounting cycles. Right? So customers can actually wait for that mega sale which is coming up, and we all know when those mega sales do happen. Right? So it has its own relevance, but after a point, one has to start believing that a certain type of customer is possibly going to engage with the brand in the period when it's on sale. And I used to handle fashion brands, and we would see this particular pattern becoming more and more pronounced. And it's actually the funny part is that you become it sucks you into this cycle, right? Because you realize that brands. So the funny part is that I don't know how to relate to it. The summer sale, the so-called summer sale, right? Spring summer sale for a lot of fashion brands actually start in January, right? This is quite counter-logical. Now, what I can trace this entire thing from a perspective of at least 10 or 15 years, where some of these things would start from March, right? Because in most parts of the country, summer sets in by March. So you would have the summer, March or April. Right? I mean, that's Southern India's summer starts in the month of March. So you would have spring summer coming in the month of March, and therefore the preceding period was used as the clearance sale, right? Which is the seasonal discount sale was the time. Now, because brands started being one up on them, right? So every brand started bringing forward or advancing the discount period. Right? So it became February, it became January, and now you have a situation where the spring summer campaign or the spring summer collections start hitting the stores from January itself. So I think it's the point I'm making is that because consumers start expecting a certain pattern in this entire in the entire seasonality to it, therefore it can lead to lower profits also, because you're doing more of discounting than the number of days that you're discounting a product actually increases over a period of time. So yeah, that's another way of doing it. Skimming is the sixth one, where typically there's a novelty attached to a lot of technology products, and one is trying to acquire this gizmo or a gadget. But it's pretty much understood that beyond a point, such products may not have lasting value from the relevance perspective or from the novelty perspective. So skimming is where you really drop the prices gradually, and then really try to make the best out of a certain product in the initial phase, and then allow the market forces to sort of get the pricing where we want it to be. This is where the penetration is where you try to get it under the market benchmark. So if there is a certain approach, if there's a certain level at which the market is operating, right? You try to get a little under it, and this is a disruptive one, right? You try to be one up on how the competition is doing. Try to get customers. Maybe Geo could be one of these examples, right? You really try to, win over customers and really disrupt the market. So this, in the long run, if you have the muscle power to sustain the initial losses or initial low profitability, you can take it forward. So yeah, that's one. Premium is something which we all know is for those categories, those brands where it's tough to quantify the exact value, right? And something which is more in the aspirational space, something which is which is not defined by specs. You can compare specs, like most technology products. You can compare. You can do A, B, C, and D, and you can create. But for let's say something which is a product of art or a product of extreme,
more aspirational or
emotional and extremely, it's something which is high notional value, right? The entire the perfumes and the watches and luxury products. There you have the premium, and as long as the story that you're telling has reasonable credibility, right? So it's the presentation here. The presentation matters. The people who talk about it, what is their credibility? If there is a history about the brand, so it's the narrative. Right? If you're able to carry through the narrative with conviction in its presentation, in its environment, the way it is conceived, the way it is communicated, all forms of the customer touch points, then of course you can command a certain premium. But yeah, this needs this needs a different approach and certain gravitas and all that. But yeah, that's premium. Value based. Yeah, this is something which is this is coming from a consumer first or customer first approach, and this can be useful for categories which are not yet well established. And if you're trying to set up a service or or let's say a product which is based on a need which is felt but not overtly expressed enough, so you're trying to figure out what could be the pricing, so you can do some product concepts, and expose them to this, and understand what could be the value that somebody could be willing to pay. So because in absence of benchmarks, you could use value-based pricing. And finally, the last one, which is the bundled pricing, right? Sometimes we don't take a single item to with great deal of enthusiasm, but the moment we see another item which is tagged along, and we see that, okay, yeah, this makes a little bit more sense, and maybe there is a little bit more value when you have some level of upselling or cross-selling. And if you look at our experiences, all our experiences on marketplaces or e-commerce stores, there is an attempt at bundling, and which happens at different stages of right. So these are 10 approaches on pricing, and frankly, these are not something that I have conceived. And a lot of what I'm talking today is something which is there. And these are approaches which are well established protocols. And it's just try to give a certain perspective in terms of where one could use it. And in fact, the next segment, which is part of this thing, is actually covering that. So how do you decide which pricing strategy, right? So any thoughts you guys have on those?
Yeah,
yeah.
So before we move to the next segment, I had a couple of thoughts. So
yeah.
One was that most of these pricing strategies, I think more or less you have covered them all. And this is what we see generally also. So for example, in my current organization, there are 4 brands which we have.
Right.
And there is a mix and match of almost every one of them. So it's cost plus margin pricing, which we do. So for example, I'll give an example. So knives, if there is a product which we are doing some product innovation, right? And there where we know that there is no precedent in the market.
Right.
So there we will normally look at what is the ROM, the RMC cost, raw material cost, the process cost, people cost. We will add all those factors And plus the margin, the owner would add their margins, and that is how we come up with the pricing. There are products which we have, which are very similar to what is there in the market. So for example, knives are already there in the market, right? So there we will look at what competition is offering them at, because knife is a very low involvement category. And so there we will look at what competition is offering them at. Then the last one which you offered, which is the bundled pricing. So we launch combos also. So that is also something which we do. Value-based pricing, that is also something which we do, because like I said, ours is a very low involvement category. So we look at what customers, so it is not that I can price my knife, a basic knife, which is being used in houses at, let's say, 600 MRP, right? So that is something which I have to look at what competition is doing and where my customer is going to spend money or not. The premium kind of pricing is not something which we practice, because my category is not like that, but it's a functional versus the emotional benefit. So for example, a person who's going to go for Mercedes or Baleno does the same thing. Its basic purpose is to transport somebody from one place to another. But there is so much of aspirational value with the brand Mercedes, and that is why people would want to spend. The other one which you talked about is the freemium, which is more, so today morning only, while going through the news app, one of the news app, I saw an ad by this app called Audible, which offers audiobooks. So it said that for 2 months, you can avail the app for free, and after that you subscribe.
Yeah.
So that's something which comes in freemium. I think more or less we have covered. There was another one which came to my mind, which was decoy pricing.
Yeah, so that's part of the other section. Where we talk about,
so I'll hold on to my horses then.
No, but
I'll just chip in. Can completely relate to this in our scheme of business as well. So even if you were to look at something as basic as books, right? There are textbooks, say for competitive examination, which are very, very, like the category they cater to, the books also are very competitive. So the pricing is, extremely competitive. Even a variation of 10-15 rupees can outprice you in the market. Most of the books are also Me Too products. So there's little room for product differentiation there, right? Though we try and be, as innovative as we can be. And on the other extreme end, if you were to look for books meant for professionals who have a higher paying capacity, there is a higher, play that one can put in terms of value-based pricing. And for connoisseurs of art, people who consume coffee table books, a premium-based pricing can also be done, because this is luxury, right? So there's something that they, keep as a gift, as a souvenir, or keep in their homes. So I can see the different ranges, different techniques that can be applied. But one of the questions began that I wanted to pose to you was that do these techniques get applied in silos, so you can only pick one or two or number three, or you can also do a mix and match of a couple of these techniques depending on the situation and the environment you are playing in, right? So can at the same time you can apply 2-3 different techniques, and then arrive at a price.
So I think this section may probably answer it. Maybe we can revisit this question if it doesn't, because so this is something that so this is something which I thought of creating as a way, and this is the most interesting part, because this is something which I haven't come across anywhere. So the rest, I would say, these are academic principles, right? Cost-based plus premium. It's not that I have created any of that, but this particular approach is something that I have created. I have not read it anywhere. So maybe if there's somebody else who's written it, it's a different thing altogether. But I thought, let me see if something can be, if somebody were to be a practitioner in marketing and is at this stage trying to figure out which way to approach, I've tried to do something here, and it's up to us, three of us, to discuss it. And I'd be happy if there are criticisms. It's okay, because we're all learning from each other. So let's go through this and see if it's answering your question, right? So, yeah, Vikesh, anything?
No, I was saying yes.
Okay. So the way I was looking at it is, let's look at it from the perspective of types of products, right? So there are products which are tangible, and there are services and products which are intangible, right? So tangible products could be in a Me Too or a cluttered space, or it could be a novel space or a trendy space, something which is which is not exposed, which is something which is new to the market. So most of the products would be in the cluttered or Me Too space. There would be lesser number of products which would be in the novel space. So if you were to look at from that point of view, or even from an intangible product, could be your software education or event, like your book publishing thing is tangible in some ways, but intangible in some ways, right? Especially because events are an intangible product, right? You have a rock star coming in and performing at a place, it's an intangible product, but you would have some benchmarks about how events are marketed as way to sort of create a certain pricing strategy. So if you were to look at the tangible part, which is the cluttered one, right? And one is looking at those that we have spoken about so far, right? So it could be about competition based, it could be cost plus, it could be dynamic. We could take an approach which is penetration as well. It could be about bundled. So for certain types of brands, certain types of categories, one could take any of these approaches. And sometimes, as Harpreet was also saying, that you could use a combination of some of these, and of course, some products may require you to be using, let's say, a competition based. In some cases, let's say you've created a value added segment, right? Let's say a knife which there are some things which are very tough to cut, by the way, right? Which is not very easy to. So if you create something which makes you cut, something which is not expected to be cut, then that's a value added. And if there's no competition, then one can create a certain value also. So that becomes a novel thing. But if there is parity which is dictating it, then you can take any of these approaches, which is on the first column. If it is novel or trendy, then you can take a skimming approach, right? And you're very cognizant of the fact that this premium or the extra value that we're charging for a particular product or service will wear off. So skimming is something that you are very alive to the fact that you may have to do a price reduction at some point in time soon, but make the best out of it in the beginning. Novelty could mean premium, so you take a completely premium approach to it, and especially if it is of a lasting value. So when I'm talking about premium in this case, so the way to look at it, skimming and premium, is skimming has a certain timeline beyond which it will no longer remain premium. So it will, once the novelty wears off, it will. But whereas in case of premium, it's like a premium product. It can be a premium watch, perfume. You take a very conscious call. It could even be a wine. It could be a single malt. You decide that, yeah, this is a certain premium product, and it will stay that way. So it holds on to its positioning as well. And if it is novel, but it is value based, right? So if it is in a segment which is a very meat and potatoes kind of segment, right? It's something which is offering,
basic essentials.
It's more essentials, right? I mean, it's not something that people are willing to pay premium, but there is no benchmark, right? But it is still considered as an essential. It is probably replacing a combination of 2 or 3 things, or it's something new altogether, right? Let's say education, online education itself, right, at some point was new, right? Nobody knew, right? How do you charge for it, right? So I don't know if they took which of these 2 or 3 approaches, but I'm thinking it could be a value based approach, right? What would parents be willing to pay if enough anxiety is created in their minds about being left out, right? So yeah, I mean, that could be another way to look at the anything which is tangible and novel. Among the intangibles, which are a bunch of services or events, etc., and a lot of new age experiences are in this space, the intangible space. It could be freemium, it could be bundled, it could even be premium, right? Sometimes you could even take an approach which is a premium approach, or if it's something which is a very basic experience, it could even be a value-based experience, value-based pricing. So overall, if you were to look at it, what the entire landscape of things, this could be the way where we could look at pricing, broadly speaking. So if you were to be if you're working in a certain industry, you can look at yourself and say, okay, I work in this, my product broadly fits into this, so I would be able to, I should be able to get into any of these ways of pricing my product.
And there is one thing more. So for example, let us say you launch something, right? You know that you did a product, you did a market disruption. So maybe you can charge a skimming or a premium based pricing. But once you have launched it, and let's say your competition also starts, I won't say copying, or maybe I will say benchmarking what you have made, and they also start giving you those features. They also start giving those features in the market. So once that happens, so I'll give an example. So for example, when Milton came with this concept of storage water bottles, right? Then Cello followed. Then the Pro Pack. Then there was Borosil. So many, Borosil was also a brand from Milton only, but so many others came. So maybe initially when Milton came, it could do a premium or a skimming strategy. But once that product becomes me too, then whoever is the follower, then probably that person will have to go for competition or cost base. And in that case, Milton will also probably no longer premium until and unless it offers a USP. So then it also would need to switch. So the point which I'm trying to make is that these pricing strategies, you could launch a product with a different pricing strategy and then later on switch to others. And the same thing could be for your own product also. So once you are trying to enter the market, it could be a penetration or it could be a skimming strategy. And once the adoption is there, then probably you will do launches, you will do bundling, you will do, again, you will go for cost base, something like that. So it's not a compartmentalized approach.
Absolutely. And we have to always remember that it is operating not as a given, it is operating in a very dynamic environment, as you rightly said. So it is about what other brands are doing. And let's take the example of Jio, for instance. I mean, I think it had an impact on the other mobile operators as well. So they also had to react in a certain way. To what extent could they react was different. But it does disrupt the market, and one may be forced to take an approach which is different from what your existing approach is. But how much can you, being what you are, what can you charge? Maybe you can still refer to this approach and see, okay, this is where we are, and given what we are, and if I have to charge a premium, can I do a value add? If my pressures today is making me a Me Too brand, can I add a value and therefore be in a position to charge a premium, right? So that re-engineering of product or experience becomes important at that stage where you start looking at it. Otherwise, you have to resign yourself to something which is more on the lines of parity than lines of distinction.
Yes.
Yes. So that's the one on how to decide pricing strategy. Now this is the exciting part, which I'm talking about today, which is about how to influence, right, decisions. And again, this is something that one has come across in a bunch of articles, and I've just tried to compile them and put together in a concise form for some of the early marketing professionals, right? So let's start with one, which is you try to keep the shipping and handling parts of your pricing separate, because it makes it seem more accessible. It's a more like-to-like comparison. So you try to keep, you just bring it down to the most essential part, which is what does it really, what is the actual price that one is paying for, and then keep, and not let people get influenced by the shipping and handling charge. There is a counter to this as well. So I want to bring it up because sometimes customers prefer transparency, right? So while this is an approach which is an approach which a lot of scholars and a lot of people say that this is an approach we should take, which is about keeping the shipping and handling separate and keep a price upfront, which is just about the cost of the actual experience of the product. But sometimes customers also feel more comfortable when there's fair degree of transparency about the actual cost that will entail. So maybe there's a way to keep the pricing part, the shipping part as some level of visibility if you give adequate visibility to it, right? So that it is not seen as a surprise. So I'm just adding another layer to what this part is all about. For sure, keep the shipping and handling separate, but if possible, be explicit about what it could be, so that there is no surprise and no root shock, because we hear a lot of times people talking about, oh, I didn't know this was still to be added to the cost. Right?
See, here I have a question and a point of view also, Vigyan. So
Yeah.
for example, let's say if I order something from, there are two shipping and handling charges, right? So for example, I ordered something on e-commerce,
Right.
or I did Swiggy, let's say.
Right.
Now the food cost is, let's say 100, and the delivery, or I will give an example of Instamart. The shampoo bottle is 200 and the shipping charges is 25. So there, as a customer, I'm aware it is 200 plus 25. Now there is another thing, when we are manufacturing the product, because I'm on this side of the table also. So when we manufacture a product, so there is something called a raw material cost, right? And let us say one part of the shampoo bottle, let's say the cap, I am not manufacturing in-house. I am getting it shipped from another third party. Now, when I do pricing of that 200 rupees bottle, there is a pricing of the shampoo, there is a pricing of the bottle, there is a pricing of the cap, and obviously there is a pricing of the body, and then there is a pricing of the person who will put the sticker, who will do the labeling, etc., etc. Now, when I'm putting 200, if I do a breakup in-house, so there is an RMC cost, like I said, these are the different costs. The cost of the cap, let us say it's 5 rupees. But when it is shipped from that vendor to me in-house before I package the complete product, or the packing which is required for that bottle, let's say 10 rupees is that shipping and handling charges for that cap which is being charged to me. Now, as far as the customer is concerned, if I have to break this up, the 200, this is what, this is what, this is what. So there the manufacturer, or there as a seller, I will have apprehensions in doing this bifurcation. So when you say that keep it separate, is it the first example which I gave, wherein I am ordering something from Instamart and the delivery charge is something separate? Or are you saying this is the latter case? Because latter case, neither the customer nor the manufacturer would be comfortable.
No, it's just the first one. Just the first one.
And also, I think, Harpreet, the customer is not very keen to know what your internal are, right? Customer is more concerned about what are you going to charge him, right? So
that's the first one.
That's the first one. And I think the first one is quite fair, because when I'm doing an Insta and when I'm going to the neighborhood house, I know that this is a convenience charge for me, which I am supposed to pay if I need that bottle at home, rather than me going and fetching it for myself.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
So that's the first one. This is the part which is now becoming quite interesting. The installments. We initially had the EMIs, and now buy now pay later. So it's something which is done in some ways to alleviate the pain of purchase, right? So if the pain is reduced, the initial pain is reduced, and I think people are typically more open to ways of accepting a particular thing. So this approach is more about really trying to bring that perspective of getting the pain part sorted early. Daily equivalence, right? I mean, a lot of brands today, especially in the service industry, and especially which is about newspaper publications, they give you this option of a small trickle. Like Spotify, for instance, has this feature where you can subscribe to something at just ₹1, right? So that's one way to look at it. But something especially maybe more than even Spotify. But let's say if you have something which is extremely premium, right? I mean, on an annual basis, if you're looking at a subscription, it becomes very unwieldy to sort of to really purchase, right? I mean, a lot of international publications, for instance, or some of these services that we talk about. So if you were to translate that into a daily cost, then it becomes a little bit more accessible to you, right? You start thinking, okay, it's just going to cost me 10 rupees a day, or let's say 100 rupees a day, or 20 rupees a day. That seems a little bit more acceptable than something which seems like, okay, you want to pay 10,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees or 15,000 rupees. So just transferring it to a daily way is a way to look at it and make it a lot more acceptable. Right?
This is Vigyan. This one was quite similar to a concept called, I'm sure both of you would be aware of. There was a concept called pay as you go.
Right.
So you keep consuming and you keep paying, or rather you keep paying and you keep consuming. So both of them went hand in hand.
Right. Absolutely. So it helps you also to sort of keep your experience, and it allows you to sort of see things in a slightly different sort of a way.
Yeah.
This is more acceptable again. This was very interesting. Now, I mean, I think I would want to hear from you guys as well, but this is something that one comes across, that if you're writing pricing, right? If you were to remove the commas, right? Perceptually, it is seen as when you have
lesser one.
Yeah,
one
when
digit,
you remove
one digit less.
Well, it looks like you've got something which is not as big, and the reason for this is what people talk about from an academic perspective, and a lot of researches have happened. So, by the way, whatever I'm presenting today is based on some well-depth articles and research which one has come across in some. So it's not my perception today, but the underlying reason that people talked about over here is that there is an extra syllable. When you say 5,500, right? Not only is there a visual of a comma in between, but even when you say 5,500. Whereas when you say 5,500, right? So 5,500 seems smaller than 5,500. Right? So this is something which is a theory. So I would say it's a theory, and one can practice and see, one can do A/B testing and see if it works. But yeah, it's something which a lot of practitioners, or a lot of there are theories about how this can actually help customer, how this can help brands get more favorable opinions from, or more favorable actions out of customers. So
there is another one also, I'm sure you would have covered, which is $9.99.
Yes, of course.
The
butter price. $9.99.
Butter price. Yeah, that's actually I didn't cover it. I don't know why I didn't cover it, because that seemed too obvious. But yeah, that's
$14.99. There was also one store in US called the Dollar Store.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, based on this only. Anything you buy, it is for $1.
So this is an interesting one, which is about congruence of the way you price and the way you say, right? So if your pricing is on the lower side, right? If you think your pricing was on the lower side, as per this approach, right, that I'm talking about, it makes sense to say low prices than to say high discount, because you're actually helping your mind to lock onto one way of thinking, which is low, low, low. Right? If the pricing is low, you might as well reinforce that thought with a word which states low rather than saying high discount. Effectively, it's the same thing, right? High discount can lead to low prices. But if you have a choice of conveying it, it is better to choose an approach or a word which is in sync and which goes with what your intent is, right? So on the other hand, if you had a very premium experience and your pricing is, you would actually word it in a way that reinforces a slightly elevated experience, right? Elevated experience. If I mean, that could be the way. When you're talking about high end, you could say something which builds into that narrative rather than something which is conflicting in narrative. Right?
Although Vigyan, what you are saying definitely does ring a bell. But if you look at the way e-commerce does it, I mean, that's a very interesting psychology there. We were having a discussion on consumer behavior, I think, in one of the episodes. So that's a very interesting psychology, which is high discount, free. So what e-commerce does is they will jack up the price. So if this bottle is for 100, they will make it 500. And on this 500, they will cut it and say 400 rupees discount. Although the price is still 100, but you know that 400 discount, this much off, this much percentage sale, this is what is going on. That strikes a chord with most of us. And I think that is one reason where most of us, at least this generation, and even we too, we go and search for deals online. We don't realize there was a very funny ad also on this. A lady goes to a shop and she says that, what is the price for this one? He says this is 100. So she says, you have charged it very high. I found it online, which was 500, and they have slashed. They gave me 400 rupees discount. So it was a joke also around that.
No, you're right. See the way what I'm trying to say over here is that if you have an option, right? I'm talking about a unique situation of an option between high discount and low prices in context of an approach where you're trying to say that the pricing is low. Then if you just had to say discount, maybe, yeah, that's a good way to say it, because discount itself has a connotation of low. Right? Discount means come here, right? But don't say high discount. Okay. If you have to say discount, just say discount. High discount means you're actually making it seem high and then discount, and then you're making mind work harder than it is programmed to work.
Right? Perhaps Vigyan and Harpreet, it will also we can perhaps also think it from a perspective of the category of the products or services that we are applying these principles to.
Right.
Aspirational products, right? Expensive items. A high discount would work well because I want to buy it because it's aspirational for me, but I'm getting a great deal of a high discount. But regular day-to-day usable products, commodity products, I prefer low prices because there I'm only looking for the lowest price, right? It's something which is a utility item for me, right?
Yes.
So perhaps the positioning also matters here.
Right.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, going ahead, this is the one that you're talking about, Harpreet, the decoy one, where you look at a certain
McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, even there's so many of these examples that one comes across. And one example that was there used by economists many years back was about really, I'm giving an example which is not in dollars, so this is just a way of looking at it, but this example is inspired from that approach, which is you offer something at, let's say the web part of it, you offer it ₹40, the print you offer it ₹100, and then you say web plus print is ₹100, right? This is just an example of how this could be, right? It is very obvious that no one is going to pick up just print because you want to see a better value. And because you've offered that decoy, which is already which is at a very high price, but because you offered that decoy, which in all our understanding is a sequential lamp, right? You're going to pick up web plus print at ₹100, right? So that's an approach which typically works when you have three three SKUs, three, even colas at malls that you find, or in popcorn sizes and McDonald's. Yeah. So a lot of these places, and especially when you are looking at something which is where you're already predisposed towards consumption, right? So you're at a stage where you're about to consume, and you don't need too much of additional impetus to sort of get you into that space. You're given these, decoy pricing, and you're given an option of trying to get the best out of it. But if you look at it, you end up paying a lot. So that's what we as marketing professionals, I think, from our point of view, is to generate value. Then you probably are looking at it.
Yeah, because when you read all three of them in one breath, web is 40, print is 100, web plus print. The first thought which comes, yeah, ये तो दोनों मिला के 100 का आ रहा है. वो print सिर्फ 100 का आ रहा है, वो web 40 का आ रहा है, तो दोनों ही 100 का आ रहा है, तो फिर यही लेना चाहिए. That is the first thought which will come to the mind of the consumer.
Correct. So the last one that you see on the screen right now is how about web plus print at ₹110, and that's the real opportunity, right? So one way to do it is to play it straight and say, okay, the decoy pricing, I've applied the decoy pricing and put it at 100. But if you were to really take even some additional, because sometimes you may want to also not be in a state where people start questioning how is it possible, right? Because there should not be too much of suspension of belief. You should still be in a state of where you can justify it. So this is something I have thought about. I've just put it in, and this is not part of the initial approach that the economist had. They didn't do this, but I'm just saying that you have an opportunity to charge. If you put web 40, it is 100, web plus print, you can actually do a little delta.
Yeah.
Right? So that opportunity exists to do a little delta because you have put a pricing which is 100 for something. So a little delta can be charged because that also builds a rationale. How strong the rationale is. Is 10 rupees enough to justify an additional medium? It's not something most people are mathematically inclined to answer that question. As long as there's a delta, or TK, then you rationalize, yeah, that makes sense that, web is this much, print is this much, web plus print kuch to extra hoga. You're able to make that. So it gives you an opportunity to not only seem more credible, but also to add a little bit more if you can. So that's an opportunity. Yeah, the other one is, of course, prepay. I think we spoke about it, especially the mind is focused on the upcoming, pleasure of consumption. So, you tend to, so what this theory basically says is that when you are waiting for something to come, right, you are a little bit more critical of it, right? So sometimes people charge up front, and then you experience it. You're a little bit less likely to be critical about the amount of money that you pay. So prepayment, if possible, is a good approach for pricing. Now this is quite interesting, right? The payment medium. Sometimes if you create a currency, right? So you convert the value from your currency into another value, which could be, if you go to gaming arcades, if you look at playing chips, whether it's a casino or any of those places, you end up in a currency which is different from what you initially started off with, right? And therefore, when you're consuming that currency, it does not pain you as much because it's another form that you got, right? And imagine a situation that if you were to charge, let's say, your gaming card by rupees 200, and instead of saying you're getting a value of 200, you say you're getting value of 2,000 points, right? Suddenly you're giving a sense of richness, right? Or to somebody disproportionate to the number, right? You spend certain amount, but you're making somebody feel that you're getting a lot more value out of it, right? You go to a place and you get 2,000 points. So even if you consume, let's say, 100 points on a particular game, it doesn't seem like you spent a lot of money, right? Because the medium has changed, right? And a lot of companies do this of deploying a medium, right? So one is that the pain that we have in terms of purchase comes from an outflow of cash, right? And once you convert that cash into another medium, it doesn't pain as much. So that's the thing on payment medium. This is something I think you guys must have come across at many places, right? Rule of 100. If the price is less than a certain 100, let's say 100 rupees, $100, visually, and this comes from a visual perspective, the way we react to visuals, the way we react to numbers, use discount. Let's say if you have a soap priced at 40 rupees for regular and you have a discount going, it is better to articulate it as 20% off than to say save rupees 8. Right?
Yeah.
Numerically, it's the same thing. But the way 20% off can seem to people is far more impactful from a decision making and a favorable outcome perspective than just to say save rupees 8. Right? Although mathematically we can understand it's the same thing. So that's the rule of 100. And
it's like same as saying, when you see these chips packets,
right,
25% more.
Yeah, exactly.
Percent more, right?
Thanks for adding that, Vikesh. Thanks for adding that. Because
you're not looking at the actual grammage, you're looking at how much more am I getting, right?
Absolutely. That's a good point, Vikesh. Thanks for adding that. Because if you were to say 7 grams extra,
nobody cares. Yeah.
Doesn't sound too great, right? When 7 grams is a big deal, right? So I mean, this is another way of looking at it when you're talking from the discounting perspective. That what you spoke about is from the extra free perspective. But in both cases, this is the principle which is used, and especially from a pricing perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Coming to the last one, which is about reason for discount, right? Now, this is a typical one where we talk about when we offer a reason, we're able to protect a certain value, right? Otherwise, people may not know what the reason is, right? So brands which are conscious about the quality try to talk about clearance sale, or they talk about exports. It's better to say export surplus than to say factory settings, right? Although in many cases it could just be the same, but it's the nomenclature sometimes makes it seem a little bit more, valuable, right? To consume a certain thing than to just say. So the way we say it, reason for discount is something that can help. So this is not exactly a pricing hack, but associated with pricing, if you were to look at a reason, that really helps. So yeah, these are 10 ways in which one could look at influencing consumers' decision in a favorable way. There could be many. I've just picked. Yeah.
Right, and I think along with this, you are absolutely right in saying that there could be a mix and match basis the strategy which you decide. And I think one thing more which I would like to add to the strategy bit as to which pricing strategy to adopt. It is not just on the product versus service. So for example, we looked at Me Too versus Novel versus software. It could also be driven by how do you want to position your brand and where your brand positioning is. So that could also define your product strategy and your pricing strategy.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Great. So I think that was very well captured and summarized by you, Vikesh. You would like to add something?
No, I think this was a fantastic session, and thanks to Vigyan, for putting it all together. Amazing set of learnings. I think our viewers are going to really relish this a lot and find tremendous value on identifying the most relevant and appropriate pricing strategy for their businesses basis this. I think we'll have, all marketers would really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very crisp, and I will say very crisp to the point, and almost everything captured.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thanks, Vigyan. So let me first stop the recording. So thanks.
Hi, thank you for watching this episode on pricing strategy. Uh, we primarily discussed three things on pricing. One is what are the different kinds of pricing strategies, which pricing strategy you should adopt for your brand in order to get the maximum value, and what are the different pricing hacks which you can adopt to influence the purchase behavior. I hope you like the content. If you liked it, please do like, share, and comment, and share it with your further network for benefit of the wider audience. Thank you.